Okay, so we're here in lesson 8.4 and we are talking about using sine and cosine to figure out the sides of triangles. And this is going to be something that you're going to be doing for a long time now, so let's learn this effectively. Okay, so we're looking at trig ratios. So trig ratios are sine, which is right here, cosine, and tangent. We're going to be using those buttons on your calculator, actually, to learn the trigonometric ratios. So, this is a story about Trigahuntus that Mrs. Jordan will tell us all tomorrow morning. So, we're going to move on to SOHCAHTOA. This is something that you're going to remember over and over and over again, and you're going to write this in your notes. Sine, so stands for sine, which is opposite, and hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent, which means next to, and hypotenuse. Tangent is opposite, and adjacent. And you're going, okay, yeah, what does that mean? Well, the best way to figure that out is to actually put it together. So, if I see sine of x, sine is always of an angle. So the sine of x, is going to be, well, if I write down SOHCAHTOA again, I'm going to be looking at the sine. The sine of x is the opposite over the hypotenuse. That's the ratio that we're going to put together. So the opposite from x is going to be 64. And the hypotenuse of this triangle is 80. So now the next step says we're looking for the cosine. The cosine of x. Well, the cosine of x is the adjacent, the one next to it, the leg next to the angle, which would be 48, over, again, the hypotenuse, which is 80. Then we go to the tangent. The tangent of x is going to be the opposite side over the adjacent side. So the opposite side is 64 and the adjacent side is 48. So now I'm going to do that for the other angle, the angle of y. So again, the sine of y. So here's y. We're going to put this ratio together. The sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse. Opposite over hypotenuse. 48 over 80. Okay, so the next one is the cosine. cosine of y. Cosine is adjacent leg over the hypotenuse. Well, this is the adjacent leg, 64, over the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is right here, 80. Finally, we're going to do the tangent. Tangent of y, opposite over adjacent. Tangent of y, opposite over adjacent. What is that, 64? Okay, so what does this all mean? Well, here we go. I can figure out the hypotenuse here by using a trig ratio. So I'm going to say, okay, I need my SOHCAHTOA. I always write SOHCAHTOA on my paper. Still, SOHCAHTOA. I can use one of those ratios to figure out x. So I'm looking at this and I see that I have a side opposite the angle, and I have the hypotenuse. So if I look at these ratios over here, I see opposite and hypotenuse right here. Opposite O, hypotenuse H. The other ones do not have that. So now I'm going to use my trig ratios of sine to figure out the side. So I'm going to write the sine of 65, because remember it's always the angle, equals the opposite side, 10 over x. And you're looking at this and you go, yeah, okay, how do I figure that out? Well, that's why you have that really fancy button on your calculator, that sine button. So what I'm going to type into my calculator, well, no, first I have to do some cross multiplication. So I'm going to do cross multiplication. X times the sine of 65 equals 10. All right. I need to get x along. And sine is actually a number. So sine of 65 is a number. I'm going to write it and divide this out. All right. So then I end up with x equals 10 divided by the sine of 65. So that's what you're going to type right into your calculator. You're going to type in 10. This is exactly what you press. Divided by the sine button and then 65. And that's going to equal, I've got it here, 11.0 is your answer. Rounded to the nearest tenth. So probably stop the video and type that in and see if you get that answer. If you don't, you're going to have to ask for help tomorrow. Next one. Okay, SOHCAHTOA. Needs to be on my paper. All right, so I've got an angle here. I notice that I've got the hypotenuse and I've got the adjacent side. Adjacent hypotenuse. Adjacent hypotenuse looks like it's going to be this one. So I am going to write the cosine of 55 equals the adjacent side, x, over the hypotenuse, 20. Cross multiply, this is over 1, and I end up with x equals 20 times the cosine of 55. That's the way you write it. So in your calculator, you're going to write 20, you're going to type 20 times the cosine button, and then 55. And x is going to equal 11.5. Again, we need SOHCAHTOA. All right. So I'm looking at this one, and I see I've got the angle here. I've got the opposite side, and I've got the adjacent side. That looks like it's going to be tangent. Opposite and adjacent. Okay, so we are now going to say the tangent of 28 equals the opposite, which is 1, over W. All right, cross multiply. Remember, this is over 1. So we get W times the tangent of 28 equals 1. Well, I'm going to divide by that tangent of 28. So that means W equals 1 divided by the tangent of 28. You do the type in your calculator, and you end up with W equals 1.9. All right, another one. Okay, now I have two angles, which means I can use any one of those, I could use either one of those angles. I think I'm just going to choose, 33. So I've got the 33, and I've got an opposite side, and I've got the adjacent side. So opposite, adjacent, that's going to be tangent. SOHCAHTOA. Tangent, opposite, adjacent. Okay, so that means the tangent of 33 equals the opposite side, 2.5, over the adjacent side, W. Cross multiply. W times the tangent of 30 equals 2.5. Divide by the tangent of 30. Remember, that's a number. Tangent of 30. And W equals 1.6. If I did it with the 57, I would still end up with W equaling 1.6. Okay, we've got 70. And from this 70, I've got a hypotenuse and the opposite side. Hypotenuse, opposite. Oh, do you remember what that is? SOHCAHTOA. Opposite hypotenuse, sine. Okay, so the sine of 70 equals the opposite side over the hypotenuse. Cross multiply. 7 times the sine of 70 equals x. So you only have to type that into your calculator, and you end up with x equals 6.6. Again, rounded to the nearest 10. Here we go again. SOHCAHTOA. All right, we've got 54. We've got the adjacent side and the opposite side. That's going to be tangent. All right, so the tangent of 54 equals the opposite over the adjacent. So we cross multiply, and W equals 10 times the tangent of 54. Type. And you end up with 13.8. Okay, last one. Find the altitude to the base of an isosceles triangle with legs 12 centimeters and the base angles of 58. Okay. Well, first I have to have an isosceles triangle. All right, easy enough. Now I want the altitude. That means it's perpendicular. Okay, so I've got the altitude. The legs are 12. Base angles are 58. And what do we want to find? We want to find the altitude. So we want to find this number right here. All right, so that's my planning. Okay, so I've got 58 degrees right here. And let's see, I've got a hypotenuse and opposite, hypotenuse and opposite. So, opposite, hypotenuse, that's going to be sine. So, the sine of 58 equals the opposite, which is x, over 12, the hypotenuse. All right, so 12 times the sine of 58 equals x. And then you type it into your calculator, and you get x equals 10.2. Have a good night.